Thomas said to Jesus, "Lord, we do not know the way where you are going. How can we know the way?" Jesus said to him, "I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to God except through me. If you know me, you will know my Father and Mother also. From now on, you do know God, and you have seen God." It's quite a controversial passage, really. You know, it makes me smile because I was looking up various interpretations of this, people's perspective on it. And in many of the very traditional Christian type websites, they're like, there it is. I mean, what else do you need? It's only through Jesus, through knowing Jesus, through a relationship with Jesus, can you know God. Now, if somebody grew up in a Muslim situation or somebody grew up in a Jewish situation, they're going to point to their book and go, look at what it says here. Yes, Christ was a prophet or whatever, but this is the way to God. Then you have people in the Christian going, but Jesus is God. It's right there. And what we forget is that somebody had to write this. A human being had to write it. Because none of us, in our current incarnations, were standing there when Jesus said to Thomas what he said. So we are faced with the dilemma of interpreting something. Now, of course, we're intelligent, educated individuals, and when he says, or when we believe he said, only through me shall you come to know God, then that seems relatively clear. When you read somebody like Yogananda, who I respect as a great spiritual teacher, he says, Jesus is speaking about you have to come through a type of consciousness in order to perceive what it is to know God. So everybody is really left with the challenge of interpreting something like this in a way that hopefully serves your life. To quote what you were saying, you want to live a better life, an ethical life. You know, this idea that the world is a mess. I actually think the world is fine. People are a mess. Because if you look out and you go out into the forest, even though things are falling and growing, they somehow symbiotically function. You know, and certain trees die, and then that death eventually decays and feeds the other things. And the animals, some eat each other, and some can cohabitate side by side. And it seems fine. I mean, I don't think that an animal likes when its life is about to be given up because another animal is going to eat it. But we all sort of go, that's how nature functions. So the reality is, the world is fine, but people are a long ways off of being fine. So the quest is, how do we get to be fine? And in a sense, Thomas is going like, what is the way? How do we do this? And I think if you have made this the focus of your life, you will be able to speak with greater conviction about certain things. Because really, you can only know with utter conviction that which you experience. And that's the essence of a mystical approach to spirituality and religion, is that you don't just read something and go, this is now my forever doctrine. You go, I'm going to integrate that teaching and see what it translates to. This is what I teach anyway. Now, I've been teaching meditation and running actually meditation businesses. You know, and right now the current one is sort of in limbo, and I may not continue to have that. However, 7 years of teaching a meditation business, you know, that's something. And many people came going, you know, the synopsis of what they're saying is, I'm an anxious person, I don't want to be anxious. And I go, okay, meditation can change that dramatically. Now, let's flip the roles, and I was coming to somebody and going like, I have tremendous anxiety. And then I sat before someone who did not appear to get that anxious, and who said, yeah, I don't really get that anxious, which in my case is true. If anything, I would lean towards being impatient and angry. That's what happens for me when I get emotional. It's just I get frustrated. But I don't generally lean towards anxiety. Now, the fact that I have been meditating for decades has definitely helped. So I would then tend to listen to somebody who basically exudes an energy which generally is not anxious. And I would say, how did you get there? And if they said, well, I learned to meditate and I made meditation a daily practice. And they're like, okay, that sounds good. I've heard meditation is good, so I go, okay, great, take the course and let's see what happens. The vast majority of people come in with great intentions, but they can't seem to make this a daily practice. Is that a fault of the human being? On one level, we say no, because it is kind of hard. On another level, we go, how bad do you want to live anxiety-free? So if I was to tell you that the secrets of the universe are in that building and it's at the top of 100 stories, and they try to go, and there's the only way to go up is by physically walking up the 100 stories. A lot of people won't make it past 5 or 6 stories because they'll be exhausted. We go, all you got to do is get yourself into shape to be able to get to the top, and then it's free, you get there. Why will people not then do everything in their power to develop the physical resilience to get there? Because there's other distractions. And because every soul doesn't have the developed drive that is necessary. So then it's easy. Somebody can go like, oh yes, the truth is up there. And here is the truth. It's like, well, did you ever go there? Well, the truth is this. Did you get to the top? And that's all. Just answer that question. Did you do the work to get to the top, to get in there and get the truth? Well, I don't have to because I know, blah, blah, blah. This is the problem when you just take a statement and you make it your truth and there's no experience behind it. Right? Now this is a segue to probably another controversial topic, which is now this a huge emergence of the social justice warrior movement. It's a good movement in this sense. People do not want their fellow brothers and sisters to be treated unfairly. That is a good intention. But what people don't realize, because they don't walk the 100 flights to the top, is they go, the media told me this, that's all I'm going to base it on, and now I'm going to go out there, I'm going to shout out the truth, and I'm going to protest, and I'm going to break things because I'm going to show you how much this is wrong. What's wrong is that you're getting a partial version of the truth. How do you know you're getting a partial version of the truth? Because it doesn't make sense, okay? Like, the general police officer is not jonesing to go out and kill people. That is not what makes somebody a police officer. So then, anytime there's some sort of violence which doesn't seem to make sense, there has to be a reason for it. And generally the reason is not, I hate that guy's guts. But that's some of the energy that is being fostered. I hate this guy because I'm white and you're black. I hate this guy because I'm a man and you're a woman. I hate this guy. And so that's all people hear. It's like, what? This white guy killed a black guy because he hated him? It's like, wait a second. Where is the data to support that? You're not running up the 100 flights of the stairs to go, I want to know all the details of it. That's not to say that there's no truth in what's being said. But partial truths are very dangerous. So if a huge percentage of the world goes like, only through being a Christian can you know God, that's not, first of all, what Jesus said. Second of all, that's not the experience of somebody who does the work would come to. A lot of people just want to go, just tell me something I can believe in, and then I'm going to march into my life and say it, but I'm not going to live it. Because if I'm going to live it, at some point I'm going to discover that it doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold up that I have to go through one man who I've never met and can't meet physically in order to know God. Like, it's a fantasy. But a reality is, you can come to know the presence of Christ that Jesus is talking about. And then you go, oh, that's truth and love, and it's in me, and now that makes sense in a different level, an experiential level, which is what I want you to have. I don't want you going out there and carrying a protest sign that says, Jesus is the only way. Because a huge percentage of the world is going to be very offended by that. Because if they have reached a place of truth and love through a different means, yes, I do believe you have to pass through this type of consciousness to get there. And I have done so because I wanted to, and I had teachers, and they showed me the way. That did not automatically save me to be a perfect human being. But it showed me very clearly the places that are, out of accord with God in me, and the places that are in accord with God. And then the rest of one's life is like, moving the out of accord places through that, narrow gate into being in accord. That's my experience of truth and love and light. Now, I've been to churches where people are just like basking in some ecstatic bliss when they hear songs like "What a Glorious Name," and there's nothing wrong with that, because the feeling of liberation and love is in that energy. So that's great. To clobber people and say, "You're a Muslim, you're going to hell," is crazy. I mean, it's sick, actually. Right? And it's not even true. First of all, have you been to heaven? Do you know that when you die, you go either to heaven or hell? I mean, that's a teaching that has become very convoluted. How about we go, when I die, I'm going to find out. But in order to maximize the probability that things go well for me, I'm going to intuitively live a good life and try to treat people right and try to make the world a better place. That makes sense to me. If I live a life of selfishness and harm to others and all sorts of opinionated ideas that clobber people, maybe when I get to the end of my life, somebody hits me with that truth and goes, "These things were off and these were wrong and you caused a lot of pain to people, and so, you got to take a little time out and think about that." And they're like, "Well, I didn't know because I thought," fair enough. You didn't know. So that's less of a responsibility compared to those who did know. And I thought about, the YouTube culture helps us to see a lot of stuff that before we couldn't see. So here's another stat. Black youth are given 3 times the prison sentences of white youth in the exact same situation. Now, if you heard that, you'd be, "That's outrageous. That's completely unfair. They can't afford lawyers, blah, blah, blah." If you understand how a judge sentences somebody, and then you get to watch it, because now they'll show you inside the courtroom. They place a lot of emphasis on the attitude of the individual during the trial process. And I have seen both white and black people sitting there, teenagers, 25-year-olds, who have killed people, who are gleeful about it. There was one kid, he wore a t-shirt to his sentencing, and on the back he had written "killer." Right? So that's just like an arrogant attitude. So the judge goes, "You show no remorse. We can't put you back into society. You're proud of being a killer, so we're going to take you out for 25 years, whether they're black or white." Now, I think that most sentences after 10 years, you should have a serious review process, because 10 years is a long time, and people can go through tremendous transformation. But some of these judges are like, "I got no choice but to give you 60 years without parole." I mean, that's insane, to say that for 60 years you're not safe in society. So we got a lot of work to do to figure out these things. But if you hear one little snippet and go, "Oh my God, the whole system is unfair," it's just not the truth. The system is undeveloped. It's immature, true. Though you have judges who are 70 or 80 years old, they've been doing this for a long time. And they start to experience, like, yes, if I let this person go after 5 years, typically they come back before me and they've done more stuff. They have that experience. That's valuable. There are other judges that are corrupt. And I've heard of judges that make money by sending kids to reform institutions, and reform institutions send kickbacks to the judge. So that's just completely convoluted and corrupt. Back to the idea that our system and our systems are a reflection of our consciousness. If you want the truth, if you want to know where Jesus fits in, if you want to know the distinction between Jesus and Christ, if you want to experience Christ consciousness, if you want to experience God, you've got to run and develop to be able to get through those hundreds flights of stairs and get into that room. Okay? Like, I don't know any other way. That is the way. Like, get to the source of truth. Somebody like myself who has been ordained a master teacher because somebody said, you did the work, I see the consciousness, we're going to give you that ordination, we pray that you do something with it. You know, like, I don't have to do anything with it. I choose to because it's meaningful to me. And there are people who have good teachings. I would not suggest that you take any one teaching and then make that your gospel. I think that you should test out and apply teachings and let the truth be revealed to you. And this is particularly the case when it comes to these social justice movements, because when you see the videos online, these people who in their hearts they want to do good are actually doing harm. They are condemning people who aren't doing anything wrong. They are misinterpreting situations and then pronouncing this extreme judgment, and then giving themselves permission to be violent in order to express this outrage. The emotional turmoil that human beings experience, to me, is the cause of the unjust, or is the chaoticness of the world. Yesterday I was working outside, and it just so happened that this father was putting his 2-year-old, the kid was probably about 2, maybe a little older, into his car seat to go home. And the kid was throwing a major tantrum, screaming at the top of his lungs, "I don't want to go!" I mean, you guys, and kids are just like, they've got no power. As a tiny being, the father is strapping him into the chair and he doesn't want to go. Okay. I mean, okay, you can imagine 5 minutes, 7 minutes. This went on and on. This kid was not going to let it go. Now, that is a perfect example of what happens when you don't get your way. Now, when you're 3 years old, all you got is the shrill sound of your screaming. There's no way you're going to overcome physically your dad when you're 3 years old. But he's kicking and he's screaming and he's letting the world know how unhappy he is. Now let's fast forward to when you're a 200-pound man and you're not happy. Okay, you could beat somebody to a pulp. In fact, I heard some guy, this is another YouTube video, some guy goes into a store, makes some sort of racial slur, the guy behind the counter is black, punches him so hard he dies. The fist can kill. So now this guy is going to experience manslaughter charges. That's a real bad way to carry out your life, that you couldn't control your anger because somebody said something to you that offended you, that you felt the need to, physically. I mean, he didn't intend to kill him, but he put a lot of force behind it. That was a really bad choice, because now the rest of his life is going to be significantly affected by that. So the task is, you have to learn how you function as an emotional being, and you have to have a process by which you can manage that. That's different than controlling it. I'm not saying restrain and suppress and repress. I'm saying manage the expression of your negative emotions through consciousness. And then you will be able to get neutral in your meditation in order to explore things that you maybe have determined are true and go, let me put this to the test, whether that's through a scientific process by which I go, okay, I'm going to try this in 6 different ways over the next 3 months to see what the results are. That is fine, because the truth will always be consistent. But you may find there's one level of truth that doesn't hold up at another level of analysis. Okay, so that means that's only a partial truth. Let's say somebody's going to go plant something, or they've planted something and it's not thriving. So most people go like, well, sun and water, that's kind of all I got to do, right? It's like, is it getting enough sun, and is it getting enough water, or is it getting too much water? Well, there are some plants that don't do well in full sun, or maybe some like morning sun. So that's another level of sophistication that you have to be able to go, it's not just sun and water. Now there are other factors. Maybe it's root bound. Maybe it's got some sort of a fungus. Maybe there's other plants in there and the thing is in a state of shock. So you have to do more research and try out more things in order to go, okay, the sun and water, that's relatively rudimentary. That's sort of a little kid grows a little plant and they go, I got to water, I got to put it by the window. Okay, that's great. You want to grow a thriving garden, you have to think about other things. You have to research, you have to try it out. It might take you 2 seasons before you go, oh, I get it. It's going to take you a lot more than 2 seasons to figure out what it means to be a human being. Okay, and what the media is feeding us, how are they taking a little bit of truth and using that to create emotional turmoil? The media finds emotional turmoil very attractive, because emotional turmoil leads to good advertising, good readership. People seem to like to be emotionally agitated. I like to be emotionally relaxed. Emotional agitation is a big seller. So if you want to know why the world's chaotic, is because we're at the same simultaneously being sold, this is going to calm you down, but this is really going to rile you up. So the truth, the life, the way, you're going to have to discover what that is and what Jesus meant when he said, only through me shall you come. Through the consciousness of truth will you get there. And what does it mean when you get there? Well, I hate to ruin the end of the movie. First of all, I'm not at the end of the movie, but I'm further along than I was. But it's not helpful for me to tell you what's going to happen next, except you're going to discover something. Isn't that more interesting than, watching the trailer of a movie in which they reveal 90% of the story? I mean, I don't know why they do that, actually, because then you're kind of sitting there going, like, when's that part going to happen? At least that's what happened for me. So if you want to truly be a social justice warrior, you want truth and you want love, do more research before you commit to a cause that incites you emotionally. Be aware of what you're standing up for, and be sure that your experience lines up with what you have determined somebody is telling you. And it's the same thing with this path. I don't demand that you believe anything I say. You only come here because you might find it interesting. So then you get to test it out and you get to try to integrate it. And what I can say with conviction is that you will begin to experience the truth and the life and the way if you follow. That's what I'm trying to create, a space where we can experience it. And it's not going to be conceptually probably what you thought. It's going to be better, and it's going to be slower, and it's going to be faster, and it's going to be harder, and it's going to be easier, and it's going to be all that. It all seems like a contradiction. But actually, as you experience it, you go, at the absolute pure level of truth, there is no contradiction. So that means that whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, they both have good ideas, and they both have immature ideas. This idea that if you're a Democrat, you have to hate the Republicans, and the Republicans have to hate the Democrats, and the blacks have to hate the whites, and the Sikhs have to hate the Muslims. It's crazy. There is no truth in that. But when somebody has an idea that you disagree with, the temptation is to become emotional and then write that person off. So there's 16 sermons we could do as a result of this. But really what I want you to take away from this is find out for yourself what that teaching meant.